Hey everyone, if you're new here, my name is Dani Christine. I'm a childcare business owner, consultant, and I create content digitally here on YouTube. This video that you are about to watch is the replay of a live webinar that I hosted today, Wednesday, May 27th, 2020, with a group of panelists that include childcare business owners of centers, as well as a freelance childcare provider. We get into some really deep discussion about how COVID-19 has impacted the services that we provide, as well as the changes that we plan to make to adapt to society's new normal standards that are going on as states begin to reopen. And for those of you watching, I think these topics are really important to consider as childcare providers of all modalities and all types of care. This webinar is about 90 minutes long. Unfortunately, my camera was not working, of course. I'll admit that I kind of waited to the last minute to get everything situated. So that is my lesson in this, to make sure I stick to my plan of preparing in advance. So I apologize for my personal camera not working. This webinar was featured on my consulting platform, childcaresites.com. I do plan to host pretty much weekly webinars, and I do have another one scheduled for next week, Wednesday, again with an accountant this time, where we're going to go over some financial planning and successful business tips for childcare providers during these times. So if you haven't already, please go over to childcaresites.com/services to register for that webinar. Aside from the technical glitch, I really hope that you enjoyed this webinar. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I wanna run through how this is gonna work one more time for everybody that that was not a participant in the last webinar. As you know, that one ran over 2 hours and it was only supposed to be 90 minutes, but I promise this time we're gonna try to stick to the time frame so that you guys can all continue watching live. But very quickly, this is how this is gonna work. We received your questions when you registered. We may not be able to get to all of them, but more webinars are coming soon. And please be respectful within the chat box as you're talking to one another, as well as to us. I am the only one taking responsibility to monitor the chat box, so it might be hard to respond to you guys immediately. Use the Q&A tool. At the end of this webinar, we will have a Q&A section where you can ask any question that might not have been addressed. So please be sure to use that tool towards the end. We will not be acknowledging any raised hands. I know that that is a function within Zoom, but while we are going back and forth with the questions with our panelists, that's not something that we can do at the moment. You might get an opportunity to have your microphone turned on at the end so that you can speak to us and ask your questions that you have as well. So keep that in mind as we get closer to about an hour from now. And after this webinar is finished, once the replay is ready to be sent to you guys, I'll ask for some feedback about how this webinar went. So please be on the lookout for that. Quick disclaimer, this webinar presentation is not intended to be regulatory, legal, or financial advice. We are speaking on our own experiences as business owners, so you are encouraged to follow your local laws and seek professional guidance from official licensing, legal, and financial agencies that practice or govern your own local area regarding your specific business. As you guys should know, executive orders and licensing and all of that stuff kind of differs from state to state, or sometimes even within the cities within your own states. So it's important to just be aware of what is currently mandatory in your own area. This is also not a training, and it is not credit bearing. If you're unfamiliar with childcare sites, on that platform you can find low-cost video courses, website design services, private video consultations as well as webinars like this. So head over to childcaresites.com to see how we can help you. And with that, I do want to jump into who's going to be on our panel for today. We have Phylisha Wright from Humble Hearts Academy, Shaniqua Briggs-Dubose from a freelance childcare provider, Dominique Ellis, the owner of Educated Minds, and as always, I will be your moderator, Dani Christine. And if you're unfamiliar with me, I do own a childcare program in Long Island, New York. I do consulting on childcaresites.com, and I'm also a content creator on youtube.com/Dani Christine. So you can head on over to those areas, either childcaresites.com or YouTube, to find out more about me. But I would love to jump right in to our panelists and the discussion so that we don't waste any time or go over time like we did last week. So we're going to start things off today with Miss Dominique Ellis. Dominique is the co-owner and director of Yolanda's Kids Corner, located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've been following Dominique for a few months now. When I moved out here to Philadelphia, I was definitely looking for other childcare entrepreneurs to connect with, and I stumbled across Educated Minds on Instagram. I was so impressed by the plethora of services that Dominique provided that I just really wanted to connect with her and make sure that I was following her. In addition to being the co-owner and director of her own program, Yolanda's Kids Corner, Dominique is the owner of her own consulting company, Educated Minds. She's worked over 12 years in the childcare industry in many roles, ranging from program owner, consultant, early intervention specialist, and CDA PD specialist. So before we jump into questions for her, I would just like to ask Dominique, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, adjusting to everything that it is that's going on, but I'm so excited for tonight.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Before we get into it, could you just tell us, I'm sure I missed out on so much more in your intro. Do you have anything else you'd like to share about the services you provide or what you do before COVID?
I know, right? So I'm a child care center owner. It's a family-based business for over 25 years with my partner, my mom, Yolanda Ellis. So we provide services for preschool students ages 3 to 5, and then we also service before and after care students ages 6 to 12. We are multi-site, so we service 2 location sites at this current moment. We partner with our local PHL pre-K program for our funding sources. And then secondly, Educated Minds is a business for childcare providers where we provide consulting services and also really good assistance with human resources and digital download templates.
Right. Okay, that's great that you offer all those services. So if anybody is interested in, that might be in Philly or that you're able to help, where can they find you? Do you have a website that you want to share?
Yeah, so for all of your consultation needs and anything like that, for mentorship, digital download products, anything like that, you can go on and visit www.educatedminds.com. You can also always follow me on Instagram at educated_minds, and also the same thing for the YouTube channel, Educated Minds, as well. For any childcare related services, you can visit yolandaskidscorner.com, and also follow our Instagram page at Yolanda's Kids Corner on IG.
Okay, great. So I do want to get into some of the questions and discussions surrounding what's going on today. These are the different discussion points that Dominique and I will go through really quickly. And with that said, we know that your program is located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. How has Pennsylvania been responding to childcare? We kind of got a brief synopsis last week with Inez, because she's also located in Philly. But could you just remind us or talk to us for those who were not here?
Yep, absolutely. So, as a child care provider, as of, I believe it was March 16th, we were actually mandated to close like many other child care programs around the world. And so, with that being said, we just have been able to virtually stay in communication with our parents, and in essence, and as far as Philadelphia, they have provided or offered, shall I say, different funding opportunities for childcare programs to apply to begin to stay afloat and begin to reconsidering opening once that mandated is lifted.
Right. Okay. So what do you remember what date you had to close down?
Yeah, so as of March 16th was the actual date that you could no longer provide active services. And then roughly about a week or two after that, they did allow providers to open with a waiver. So you had to apply for a waiver if you were providing, child care service to essential workers' children. So that was an additional, option that they offer providers to open under a waiver in which you had to apply for.
And you didn't want to do that within your program?
No, at that time we just decided, because we were providing services all the way up until that Friday.
Yeah.
But moving forward, once the mandated was out there, we just decided to close down for the safety of our staff, ourselves,
Right.
and then also families, because trying to, keep abreast and keep children and staff safe between two locations would have been very challenging. So we just decided to take it virtually, with our parents and build off of that.
Okay. And you've got a good response from your families with the virtual experience.
Yes, it's a growing process. You see
Yeah, I can definitely relate.
Yes, it's a growing process. We're about going on to 2 months now virtually. So initially, we were just, contacting parents by phone, but we were able to offer virtual learning with the children and the staff. All of my teachers were able to get on, and we offer Zoom on Wednesdays and Fridays at 10:30 every morning. Also, we really began to utilize our website. So I was able to go in and upload daily lesson plans that we send to parents through our parent portal, and really just provide them resources through the curriculum, and really allow them to do things on their own pace, but still check in with them every day. So the virtual, it's a growing process now. From the beginning, when parents were just, kind of learning how Zoom worked and everything like that, we have much more consistent feedback on our virtual meetings with our families and children.
Right. Okay, that's great to know. And hopefully engagement and participation goes up as time goes by.
Yes.
So with the thought that I hear that Philadelphia is going to be reopening centers is it next week?
Yeah, so Philadelphia will be moving in as the county itself will be moving into the yellow phase, in which that's June 5th. And so at that point, childcare providers can begin to go back to work, reopen their childcare programs as long as they are, practicing best practices which are recommended by the CDC.
Right. So what procedures do you think you guys are going to change, or do you have plans to change once you do reopen?
Absolutely. So that's one of the things that my team and Zoom is like the new wave of everything. You talk to everybody about Zoom. So that's definitely something my team and I as directors were, really looking at readjusting. Some of the changes that we've already made is communicating, with those parents, as we are now going to kind of be virtually graduating our graduates and transitioning into summertime. So we are reaching out to our parents still virtually and also by phone to see what their plans are. Will they be returning? Also, we've put in place new arrival and departure procedures, policies, new checklists for both staff and the children as they come in. And the most important one is locating consistent vendors for all of the sanitary requirements that you want to make sure that you're meeting. So just ordering an abundance of supplies so that, we can have it, because you don't know when it's going to go back out.
Yeah.
Last but not least, we've been making entry renovations. So we knocked down some walls, ordered new mobile sinks, for when parents, actually walk in the door. So that is like, boom, boom, boom. We're not like coming into the actual facility.
Right. I love the idea of the mobile sinks. I personally feel like it would be, I've heard that it is a headache to clean them, or
Yes,
like
I've had them.
oh, you've had them before?
Yeah, so we already have mobile sinks, and it is a very heavy, that's the word I'll describe, very heavy maintenance to it, but it definitely works for times when you can't get to that bathroom, especially for moments, like now. So,
Yeah.
it'd be worth your investment.
Right. And I think that it's just in general important to note that even though, like you said, it's heavy, or I heard it might, if you don't clean it often enough, it can be smelly or whatever the case is, there are different things that we as child care providers are just going to have to do, even though it might not be the easiest or the most convenient thing to do during this time. In my program, my administrators, all the new things that we're implementing and I'm asking them to do, sometimes I'll get pushback about like, oh my gosh, that's so much extra work. And I'm like, yeah, it is, but that's what we're dealing with right now. So it's important to just acknowledge it, accept it, and do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And like I tell, my directors when we meet, my partner, like there is no rule book. This is something that all providers are, going through and figuring out as the phases, play themselves out. There's no like set guidelines. So the best thing you can do is really educate yourself and learn, through that trial process.
Right. I agree. So with the new procedures, do you have any policies, like written policies, that you think you're going to make adjustments to, or have you done that already?
Yes, so actually, today was the day that we were finalizing policies. So we do have policies that we have. So we've updated our arrival policy, where we'll kind of be doing, it's not necessarily curbside, like out the car, like the food, but we will be doing a curbside within our, we have a indoor playground in essence, like in the front of the building. So we'll be doing, I guess, curbside playground drop off, where one designated employee will be responsible for that, taking of the temperature, recording it. And those are also all of the documents that are on the Educated Mind site as well. So we've updated our arrival procedures, where parents are not permitted to enter the building at this time. Things are always subject to change, but making sure that we complete the checklist for both staff and for children. And then lastly, we've also updated our actual system. So we put in, or we will be installing a new PA system in the facility. So therefore, when the children enter the building, now there's another, designated person that will wash their hands, remove their belongings, and, take them to the assigned classrooms. Okay. Another policy change that we're making is, I know that they're really recommending the whole group by families and same teachers. That's what they are, advising us here in Pennsylvania. So that's a really big adjustment, especially for larger providers with large facilities. Grouping by families and, staying with the same teacher, because in childcare, people are floating all the time. Right. So that's something that, we've considered in regards to ratios. Who are we going to group where with the children that we for surely have communicated are definitely returning back.
Yeah, and my program is in New York, and they have not made any, I feel like New York has not really been progressive with their official guidance or new regulations towards childcare. Mm-hmm. So we don't have any sort of mandatory changes to our operations. It's just quote unquote strong recommendations. So it's kind of frustrating at this time, but I can't imagine needing to group my kids by family, being that we serve. I think it would be a lot easier to do that if you were just doing preschool and maybe school age, but we serve from infants, like 6 weeks old through 12 years old, in a building that has 7 different class groups. So I don't know we have families that have 3 or 4 children. So I know that it's possible to educate this way, because that's how home daycares do it. And if you are a nanny or a babysitter, or like I said, a home daycare provider, you are educating children at the same time of different age groups. But in centers where there's already this established structure and different materials and furniture and different things for those age groups, it's kind of hard to make that adjustment. But yes, like I said before, a few minutes ago, if you have to do it, it's just something we have to figure out.
Yeah.
So how do you plan to communicate all these changes with your families?
So one of the things that we're doing in regards to some of the changes that we're making, like you said, it's strong recommendations, not necessarily a requirement. So some of the things that we're doing with parents is still sticking with the virtual way. As we are updating our website, on when the official start date is going to be, also giving that checklist to parents on what they need to do prior to. And we're also mandating that all of our new returning parents, whether they're new or whether they're returning, they're going to be required to take our parent online portal training. So we have an online I created an online portal training for parents to go on and basically learn the handbook and everything like that. So we're creating that for our parents just to go over the, basic of all the documents that are required to actually start. And, we're not allowed that wait time of the health assessment right now.
Right.
So that's something that's really crucial that they need to know to plan out prior to its opening. And also just going over what those arrival procedures look like, the do's and the don'ts. As far as cell phones on the phone, people are coming in, sanitizing and mask, and just really having that full attention because it's going to be really crucial during this arrival and drop-off procedure because we've never done it before. So we just want all our parents to be on the same page. So we're having them do just a mere quick training on our website to really know what it is that's going on. And then also we use tadpoles, which is like our parent involvement communication via text message. That's the way that we were using to send lesson plans. So we'll also be sending any documents that they need via email for the groups that we've created over this time.
Right.
Emails, and then also just updating our voicemail so that they can know where to find the information, where to download any forms that they need, and immediate access to us.
Right. I love tadpoles for that reason. I think it's so great too. For those of you who don't know, tadpoles, like she said, is a child care management software, and you can use it for communication. I would recommend it, and I think that it is great for putting children in groups, not only by classrooms, but you can kind of create labels and quick lists for kids. So I've been doing that as well. So that's a great strategy. We do have a question that was submitted by one of our attendees upon registering. Do you have any insight into how you're going to be conducting tours moving forward?
Yeah, so currently right now what we're doing is I try to make everything as accessible to parents as possible in this digital day and age. So we will be, when the center is physically closed and before we actually make their reopening, trying to record the actual classrooms with still pictures and then actual videos so that they can physically see the layout of the building for all the different classrooms and then outdoor play and things like that. So then therefore they can just go on again to the website and the virtual tour will kind of be there almost as whether it's a slideshow or actual video kind of outlining what goes on in these areas of the building. Right.
Okay, that sounds great. Do you have any concerns about families that really do want, how you would address families that insist on coming in or seeing the space before leaving their child with you? How would you kind of handle a parent that has some pushback?
So which is almost, that has to be something that's very understood, because that's almost like an apartment, a car. You want to fill it before
Right.
you physically, and especially with your child. So one of the things that we will consider moving forward as things kind of lay out, because things are just so unforeseen right now, would be possibly scheduling the tours after hours, because we are shortening our hours of operation, so that we can allow our teachers time to do sanitary practices every day. So that's something to consider, that when people come in, still give them that screening, to answer their questions that's on the checklist that we provide, and obviously taking their temperature, and scheduling at that time for them to actually see the physical facility, when no one's physically in the building, unless it's just like immediate maintenance or something, but not where other people are out there to be exposed in essence during daily operations.
Right. I agree. That makes sense. And sometimes just in general with everything, it just takes a little bit of extra communication with families as advanced as possible, to let them know about the reasons why you're doing certain things, to help them to understand why certain things are important and just necessary and can't be negotiated. I think that a lot of times families just in general like to negotiate, not only with pricing or anything like that, but just what they think is acceptable to do or not to do in programs. And this is not the time for negotiation.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we're doing. Being that the order is lifted on the 5th, I know a lot of childcare programs are going right back on the 8th. And so that's something that we're not doing, going back that week, because we really have to, train the staff and work with them and see what is that going to look like,
Right.
and let everyone feel comfortable, because no matter how many years you've been in childcare, this is a situation, and this is an era right now that is really, you're learning as you're going, so just really trying to make sure that we enforce those policies in the best professional way possible to our families, but still, sticking to your guns, because you want to protect the safety of everyone.
Of course. That's perfect. Thank you so much for giving us insight into how you're doing things in your program and offering your services. I'm going to bring you back towards the end when we have our open Q&A session. So thank you so much, Dominique.
Awesome, and thank you guys for having me.
Okay, I'm gonna stop your video. All right, so we're going to move on to our next panelist, Shaniqua. Shaniqua is a freelance child care provider, newborn care specialist, infant sleep trainer, and the author of How to Smoothly Transition into Freelance Child Care. She has been working with children and families for over 15 years in numerous areas of the industry, from being a preschool lead teacher to being a full-time nanny, and now working solely with infants and their parents. Shaniqua, can I bring you on? I'm going to turn on your camera.
Yes.
Hi, Shaniqua. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Before we jump into your questions, the questions that I have for you, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and any services that you provide that you'd like to share?
Definitely. So, as you said, I'm a newborn care specialist and an infant sleep consultant. And through all this, I have been a freelance child care provider, which to me is my definition of it is that I work with more than one family at a time, or I work with one family for a short period of time before going to the next family. My business is very goal oriented. I am there for a purpose. So as a newborn care specialist, I start with families as soon as they come home from the hospital. I've had singletons and I've had all the way up to triplets, no quadruplets or anything yet, but I look forward to that actually. So within that time, I'm doing parent education. I'm taking care of the children overnight. And sometimes I do temporary daycare during the day, and I've also done 24/7 care where I'm living in with a family for anywhere from 2 weeks to 8 to 12 weeks. I'm living in full time and really getting the parents adjusted to life with a new baby or new babies. And when I mention goal oriented, I'm literally going in to set routines, to set healthy sleep habits, to sleep train, to ensure that the parents adjust well, because I'm big on balance and making sure that not only are the children healthy, but that mom or the birth parent is healing well, and that we are meeting goals that they may have. And I'm also the author of How to Smoothly Transition into Freelance Childcare. I created that ebook because I always got a lot of questions about what I do, how I did it, how I do it, and just so many questions. So I put that book together to really help others understand freelance childcare, understand how to get into freelance childcare. And yeah, that's a little bit more about me. Oh, and I'm in the DMV area, the DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia area.
Wow, that's a lot. And that's really special and very different than what we've been covering and, really talking about and focusing on. So I'm so curious as to how everything that's going on right now is specifically impacting you and the families that you do provide services for. So I'm excited to kind of jump into that and learn how you've adapted your services. But before we do that, do you happen to know how Maryland has responded to, if not specifically childcare programs, just in general, what's going on in Maryland?
So Maryland wasn't super clear about the type of care that I do, which is in-home childcare and what they call dependent care. They weren't super clear, but Virginia was. So being as though I live in like the not tri-city, because it's just 3, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I ended up going with Virginia since I was working in Virginia at the time. So they allowed childcare and dependent care, and they deemed it as essential. But Maryland didn't. So we had like it may still be going on, but we had a curfew. So initially, with me working overnight most nights, it was a little shaky, but I had an essential workers notice, which we had to provide if we were pulled over. So that was something good to have. But
oh, wow, they went as far as pulling people over to.
Yes. Yeah. So because I was doing like temporary day and overnight, it was a little tricky. So I just had to be careful, because when I go in overnight, I'm literally leaving my house at 9 or 10 p.m. and the curfew was at 8 p.m. So I didn't get pulled over, thankfully, but that definitely was something that they put in order.
Yeah. Okay. Well, did you ever suspend your services because of what was going on? Could you talk a little about that?
So initially my services slowed down. So I'm a worker. Like I work hard and I work a lot. So literally like last year I had 26 clients throughout the year and like over 4,000 hours. So it was definitely a transition. But when the mandate started in March, one client just said, okay, we want to be safe. So they stopped working with me. So I was only working with one client. And the only reason that I continue with that client, because I definitely, care about my health and safety as well. I continue with that client because they were doing social distancing. So that's pretty big for me. If you are not social distancing, then you are not the family for me to work with, because we need to protect each other. But they were doctors, so I really felt comfortable kind of working with them, but they weren't in-hospital doctors. They were doing everything virtually. So other than being virtual, they didn't have family in the area. So I continued working with them, and not only work with one family per week. So if they wanted me for 1 day a week, or if they wanted me for 5 days a week, I would do that. So it was pretty slow, because initially I was working like 5 to 6 days per week. So just depending on one family's fluctuating schedule was a little crazy, but I did not work for 3 full weeks before starting with the family that I'm with now. So I did do that. I was going a little crazy, because like I said, I'm used to working, but it was definitely a need for me to just sit down and make sure that I was healthy before starting with another family, and before just continuing this work, because in the home is a bit tricky. Because you don't know what people do when you're not there.
I can imagine how nerve-wracking that must have been, especially in the beginning, when we all didn't really know what this virus was, what it meant, and how it was going to affect us in the long term. So now that we're 2 months in, over 2 months in, has your business like been picking up in a way? Like, I know, as Dominique mentioned, many childcare programs were forced to close, not just in Pennsylvania, but all over the world, really. Programs are forced to close, or even if they were not, some parents, even with child care centers being an option, or home daycares being an option, might have chosen to now, let's see how I can just find child care to come to me. Have you gotten any other inquiries because of that?
So typically with my business, families do hire me ahead of time. So I did already have like a couple of families lined up for June and August, but as I was in quarantine, I really like got my marketing and things together, and my website together. So from that, I did get a family just for 2 weeks. So last week and this week, before I start with my June client. So I would say it's definitely picking up, because I am independently doing the work, and I am through an agency doing as a contractor. So within the agency, initially it was like 1 job or 2 jobs coming in, but now it's picking back up, and we're seeing like 5 or 6 jobs a day. Still not as much as we normally see, but it's definitely picking back up, because I think that though people are scared and we really don't know how this is being done, people are still having babies. And they still need the help. They still need the support. And especially when, like for my current family, I really feel for them, because the husband is in the Middle East, and he was unable to come back, and she had the babies early. So she had twins. So she's here with her family, but she doesn't have that support that she really needs. So bringing in premature twins was definitely something that was pretty nerve-wracking for their family. So they ended up finding me, and I've been helping as much as I can. But it's definitely been.
Yeah.
It's picking up though.
Okay. And you mentioned a minute ago about marketing. So that kind of leads me to jump straight to our attendee question. Olamide, and I hope I'm pronouncing their name right, wants to know, what new advertising and marketing plans can a child care owner use at this period? And I thought that this question could be useful for you. Even though you don't own a child care center, you are still an owner of the service that you provide. And as a child care provider, whether you're a center owner, home daycare owner, freelance nanny, or freelance childcare provider, a nanny, babysitter, whatever you do, marketing is important to get the word out there about the services that you offer. So has that changed for you, or have you kind of spent more on advertising, or what can you add to that, to Olamide's question?
Yes, so it has changed. It's shifted because, and like I said, I am a contractor with an agency as well as doing it independently. So with the agency, I was getting a lot of jobs, but then that kind of slowed down. So with me being independent, I definitely started going heavier with getting my website together, Google Ads, Facebook, and I'm going to start running some Facebook ads. I'm just trying to get on the virtual side of things because though I can't be in the home with a family, I still have a lot of education to provide to the families about newborn care, newborn sleep, infant care, infant sleep. So I'm definitely trying to move closer to the virtual world just because we just don't know what COVID has to offer. They said it's supposed to be another flow of this in November, so who knows, but I just want to be more prepared. And so Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram, blogs is good for your SEO. And because it's kind of hard now to just have a business card or a brochure and leave it at a business or give it out to people, because now people don't want to touch anybody and nobody that's a big marketing strategy, but that's kind of depleted. So definitely it's good to really hone in on the virtual side of things and get your name out there and show what you do. Even if you can't show the children, just kind of show what you do and how you do it and how you run things. Like for me, I do sleep plans and I'm always showing like how I'm doing it, and just giving a little snippet on Instagram or something like that. But I think that's the biggest marketing for us all at this time, because like I said, going up to people like, hi, is a thing of the past for now.
And I'm actually really impressed by your Instagram page, and I do agree that you do highlight a lot of the work that you do. I see you posting pictures of triplets. I'm like, how does she have an extra hand to document all of this stuff? But it's actually really important that you do try to document as much as you can, if for no other reason than at least just the memory. I know my center has been open for over 3 years now, and I first started out as a home daycare provider in 2014, and sometimes I look back at those photos and just to see the growth is inspiring for yourself, but more importantly for new business to succeed within the industry. As Shaniqua mentioned, we're not going to be able to give out business cards or leave flyers places anymore. Certain places are not even accepting people to step inside their business. So with that being said, are you showing up digitally online and announcing the services that you have available? And if you're not, you can go to childcaresites.com to get some help with that. Okay, so Shaniqua, do you have any advice for other child care providers or teachers? Because I know you said, you mentioned that you started off as a preschool teacher within your bio, who might want to shift to this style of childcare in the future?
Yes, I definitely have advice for them first. My first advice would be to get my ebook. It explains everything from establishing your businesses to marketing to scheduling clients. And I will also say, make sure that this is what you want, because being a small business owner, and I'm sure you ladies can attest to it, being a small business owner is not for everybody. Everybody is not meant to be an entrepreneur. Everybody is not meant to take those risks. Everybody is not meant to move forward with having their own business. So make sure that is something that you want. Make sure you know the risk. Make sure you're okay with taking those risks, and make sure that you find out your niche, because in the market that I'm in, you can, there are many areas that you could choose from. Newborn care, you could be a sleep trainer for infants and toddlers, lactation consultant, certified lactation consultant, you can talk about baby wearing. It's a lot of different options. And if you're anything like me, you may dibble and dab into a lot of different areas because I'm very good at newborn care, but I'm looking to extend. So I am a doula in training as well. So it's a lot of different areas that you can choose from. Just make sure that you can show up excellent in whatever area you choose to do. And don't just do it for the money, because the money is great. But if you really don't have a heart for children, there are times and days and nights where it gets hard because the baby is colicky, or they're dealing with reflux, or a family is not ideal. Like there's a lot of different things that you have to take into consideration when jumping and doing this type of work. And another thing I would say is connect with me. I'm an open book. If you have any questions, I'm definitely there. And then research your rates in your area, because that's big. You don't want to sell yourself short, which I did for years. Like Dani mentioned, I have been in childcare for 15 years. So at the beginning, I was selling myself super short. So it's very important to know the rates in your area and know what you are worth, and feel good and comfortable with that, and create a contract. And my last one would be to create a contract, even if you're doing part-time care, because some families will try to not pay, or want to pay under the table, or do this and do like it can get tricky if you don't have a contract. And if you have any questions about that, let me know.
How can they reach you?
You can reach me. I need to do better and get a website for freelance childcare, but you can reach me on Instagram at the freelance childcare, at the freelance childcare provider, I believe.
let me go back and put it up on the screen. At the freelance provider.
There we go. You can reach me there. I don't currently have a website, but if you go to the link in my bio, you can get the book, you can connect with me, and you can also listen to my podcast.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I did listen to some of your episodes a few months ago. It's great.
I haven't done much with it for a while, but I will bring it back. It was a great go. I just need to, get more people to interview. But yes, and I also have a blog, so everything is in the link in my bio. Hopefully I can bring it all together and have one home for it all, but for now, link in my bio.
That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here, Shaniqua. I'm going to bring you back on towards the end in a few minutes after we speak to our next panelist for our open Q&A session. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So our next panelist is Felicia Wright. I actually connected with Felicia because we are a part of the same kind of international mastermind group for childcare providers. And if I'm not mistaken, I met her last year. And I think that she is a great resource for other childcare providers who are looking to start their own business. Felicia Wright is the owner of Humble Hearts Academy and a preschool and infant center located in Hawthorne, California. In addition to her preschool business, she is a childcare business coach who helps other owners scale and grow their businesses. Felicia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for being here and jumping on this webinar. I know we kind of threw it together last minute within the last few weeks, but I'm glad that you were able to add it into your schedule.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here, and thank you so much for the opportunity to just be able to share with other owners and providers just during this difficult time right now.
Yeah. Would you be able to give us a little more insight about what exactly it is that you do and the services that you provide before we jump into your questions?
Yeah, of course. So just a little bit of background about me. I got into the childcare industry, I guess, kind of by chance. I was set to start a nursing program, and then I had the opportunity to start a home daycare. So like you, Dani, I started with the home daycare, and then I transitioned to the childcare center where I'm at now. So I did that for a while. I just did all of the things. I was the director, the janitor, doing the tours, doing everything. But I knew that I wanted to eventually be able to work remote. So I just put systems in place, and I got to the point now where I'm able to run my program from home. And so then that kind of sparked the idea to do the coaching, because I knew that there might be other people like me who kind of shine more behind the scenes in running the program, you know, kind of from home.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I feel like I work my best when I have this space to think of creative plans, and to kind of delegate tasks. I know I have administrators in place. I call one of them my firefighter that handles crisis, and others that lead our teachers. Like it's honestly amazing what you can do when you begin to work on your business and focus on the business development than running day-to-day stuff.
Exactly.
So that's awesome. And I don't think I mentioned it, but your website for people to reach out to you or book your services is, do you want to share your website?
Yeah, of course. So it's www.feliciaj.co.
Okay, perfect. And I'll put that in on the platform where I release the webinar replay. All of the resources that Phylisha, Dominique, and Shaniqua mentioned will be located on that page that you guys will receive tomorrow. So being that you're in California, Felicia, can you speak a bit about how California has responded to childcare programs throughout this pandemic?
Sure. So I feel like as a whole, they responded pretty well. But in the beginning, like I know a lot of other states, there just wasn't the information. And I think what was so frustrating for our state was that it kind of felt like they weren't telling us to close, but we knew that it wasn't safe because I felt like they knew that they needed us to be open, but they didn't want to say to stay open. So we were kind of just like out in open water, just trying to figure it out. And so we just decided to close for about like a month or so, just for safety, because I felt like just not knowing if it was safe, if it wasn't, especially in childcare, since we're already so vulnerable. Like the children, the staff, we always get sick. So I'm like, I kind of feel like we would be just as susceptible as anyone else. So we just went ahead and closed for like a month. And then we just used that time to kind of come up with a game plan. And then we reopened on our own terms when we decided that it was safe to do so.
Right. That's kind of similar to in last week's webinar, Lakeisha Dorsey from Texas, she mentioned she came back from vacation, all of this started happening, and she decided to close for a week to plan, to acknowledge what was going on, get her thoughts together, and plan how to move forward. That's honestly not even something that I thought of personally for my program. We did, once the district decided to close all K-12 schools, we immediately were just kind of rolling with the punches and making changes day by day. So I wish I did take a minute to just process and plan. And close my doors temporarily, but it's great that you had that opportunity to do that. So with you being closed for a month, what made you make the decision to reopen?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, what made you make that decision to reopen after a month?
So what really helped for our program is that I feel like the state, so in the beginning, they weren't extremely like helpful as far as exactly what we should do, but they did decide to still pay programs that had like children that were receiving a subsidy. And so our program is like over 85% subsidized care. So once we didn't know that in the beginning, but maybe like after the first couple weeks, they let us know. So we're like, okay, good. Like we know we're going to get paid regardless. So that's helpful. So then we just kind of put all of our plan into place. And then that's when we decided like, okay, now's a good time to reopen. And then also we had started our virtual preschool program during the time that we're closed. So once that was kind of running smooth, then we knew like, okay, we can start to have the children and some of the staff come back.
Right. Yeah, that is similar. Your experience in Cali is similar to New York, where in the beginning, they were kind of not really saying that they recommend us to close. They were kind of encouraging, honestly, I would say encouraging us to stay open by mentioning just
Right.
how essential childcare is. They were even offering like extensive waivers to waive the need for certain background checks, which I was surprised by. Background checks, classroom capacities could be waived. It was a whole bunch of stuff that I was just shocked by that
Right.
kind of contradicted what was going on.
Exactly, because even here they had what they call like a pop-up center. And so they would allow companies to just, I mean, not completely bypass all of the licensing guidelines, but almost just like have an express ticket to just open up a program and just operate it and have kids come, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. So then do you happen to know how they would, what do they do after? Like once it's not declared a public health emergency anymore, do those pop-up centers have to close down or?
I don't know. I'm kind of wondering the same thing. Like, I don't quite see how that works, but
I did hear about other states having sort of pop-up centers. That hasn't been the case in New York, and I think that's just mostly because they never required or mandated programs to close, so I guess it wasn't needed. But yeah, so that's interesting.
yeah. And it was something that even I considered too when we closed. I'm like, we have to figure out something. Like, not everyone's going to make it, unfortunately, but like, I just refuse to let our programs be one of the ones that don't. So I was just brainstorming everything I could think of. Prior to working in childcare, I worked at a hospital, so I have some connections within healthcare. So I was reaching out to people I knew, and I'm like, hey, do you guys have people that need childcare? Like, would you be interested in subcontracting? Like, anything I could think of.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do have to, as center owners, switch up the way that we advertise. I know I recently edited my Google advertisements because we have running ongoing Google ads listed online, and I usually never change it up, but last week I decided to put in some wording about essential workers, and New York is currently doing free childcare for essential workers. So putting that in there so that people that see these ads are not just seeing the typical infant care open. Yeah, so they're seeing like, okay, yes, this program is open. Because I think a lot of, even though New York programs were not forced to close, a lot did. And parents are finding that they're calling programs and they're not answering. I've tried calling programs myself, just doing business-to-business connections. They're not answering the phone or putting any communication out there as to how long they'll be closed, when they're open, and when they might reopen. And I think it's kind of detrimental to the continued success of their business.
Exactly. I agree.
So being that your program, is California currently open or going through the reopening phases?
Yeah, I want to say today they started to where even retail can open. People can go inside just with limitations, but for the most part, I feel like we're starting to open back up.
Okay, so, but if you did reopen your center within a month of this COVID emergency, you were open at a time when the state was closed. How has that experience been for you? What were some of the things that you had to change?
Sure. So I feel like it was an experience. We just went with like the CDC guidelines because that just seemed to be the most, I guess, informative at the time. So we did the whole like temperature checks for staff, for children. We do like the outside drop off and pick up. We even went and have our staff to wear masks, and even the children, which at the time when I read the guidelines about them suggesting that children over 2 wear masks, I'm like, that's not going to happen. Like, it seems difficult, but we just said, you know what, let's still try it. Like, we want to know that we've done every single thing possible that we can just to keep everyone safe and everyone healthy. So we just incorporated more into our lesson plans about how germs are spread, about why they have to wear masks, and that whole thing. And so they've actually been doing really well. So even the children wear masks too at our school.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If you were to tell us 3 months ago that all these different changes that we're now implementing must be made in childcare, I'm sure all of us would say that you're crazy. That's not possible. It can't happen.
Right.
But if you never try, and it kind of goes back to what I was talking about with Dominique, that like some of these things might be inconvenient. It might take an extra few minutes or some time to adjust. But it's important that we do these steps and take these precautions to protect our business. And maybe if you just take the first couple of experiences to try it out, you might see that it's easier than you think. We have not, is California making it mandatory for children to wear masks?
No, I feel like nothing's mandatory. A lot of things are just like suggested or the guidelines. So, I mean, most people that I know aren't requiring it.
Okay, I'm only asking because for New York, teachers are all essential workers in all industries right now are required to wear them as adults. But for children, the CDC recommends it, but licensing doesn't require it. So we have not, we did buy children's masks just in case parents did want it, or if it did become necessary. Like again, Dominique was saying that she has a supply of a whole bunch of stuff in her program now in case it runs out again. So I was kind of worried that like it would become an executive order and we don't have them on hand. So I ordered some, but I don't think that I haven't made the decision to make it mandatory as a company policy. How did your parents respond to you doing that for the kids?
I feel like they were just kind of like, whatever you guys feel is best, we trust you guys, which felt good to know that they were pretty much down for whatever it was that, you know, we felt was best for our program. So we didn't have not a single person have any issue, because we figured, oh, well, I know I read about like I believe carbon monoxide, like from having a mask over your face, and it could be dangerous for kids. But no one really had any issue. I mean, I think too, our kids, like they wear their masks kind of like under their nose, so they're still able to breathe. But for us, I'm like, I feel like they cough more than they sneeze, and we, you know.
Right. I think that's still helpful. Yeah. It's definitely still helpful. That even like they just spit while they're talking because they're kids.
Right.
So I think that having something is better than nothing.
Exactly.
So speaking of how your parents responded, how has your communication been with your families?
So we communicate primarily through Brightwheel, just through the messaging feature with them, just because it's easier to just put out all of the messages to everyone at once. But we also like to call here and there just to check in, you know, just for them to hear our voice. Some of them are at home with no other adult interaction. So It's nice just to kind of see how they're doing. A few of them will stop by because like, oh, I forgot a blanket, like the ones that aren't currently coming, just for things that they left, even though I'm like, I don't think they need to come back, but I get it. So they stay like their safe distance away, and we kind of chat, say hi, and then they go back home.
Yeah, that's interesting. So have you implemented any virtual learning within your center to kind of keep that communication going with families that are choosing to stay home during this time?
Yes, we have, and that's been an interesting journey too. So we started off initially with a paid program, just because I'm like, oh my gosh, we need revenue. Like, what if we're not going to get paid while we're closed? So we started that like full force, to where it was like an AM and a PM session, and we assembled the kits and we sent them out and we ran ads and all this stuff. And I mean, I feel like it was okay, but it wasn't like the response that I wanted or that I felt that we needed. And so once we decided that we were going to reopen after the month and some of the children were coming back, we were just like, okay, it's kind of a lot to have to maintain given the amount of kids that we have on there. Because even a lot of our families, like, I think they're just trying to take this time to be at home, spend time with their children. So some of them weren't really interested in getting online. So we were just like, okay, what would this look like if it were easy? So for us, we were just like, let's just make this free. Let's open it up to the community, just people that are local, and, you know, ditch like the whole box and sending stuff out. So it was last Thursday that we came up with all of this. So I came up with like a plan just to put it out to the community. I did that on Friday. And between Friday and yesterday, we had like over 90 enrollments.
Wow.
Yeah, into our program. So we were going to cap it at 100. So now we're kind of figuring out how that works. But I think for us, it's good because we're able now to have enough people to kind of see like what works, what doesn't work, what do people like, what do they not like. We're able to meet more people in the community that could potentially lead to children that come for our in-person program. And then maybe come the fall, we'll be able to just figure out a better way to monetize it. Yeah. Because I feel like it's so important to make sure that you have something going on right now, because we just don't know what's going to happen October, November, December. So it's kind of best to start that now, just kind of see what works so that, you know, at that point you're prepared.
Right. Well, Felicia, that's so impressive to have 90 enrollments over a couple of days, even regardless of, yes, it's free, but just to engage 90 families within your community over, how many days did you say?
So I put it out on Friday. So pretty much between Friday and almost Sunday, because that's when like the bulk of them came in.
How did you do that? What did you do?
Right. So what I did was I started, I'm trying to think. So I posted on our Instagram, which doesn't even have that many followers. I think at that point it had like 40 or so. But I had saw that like our city, like the city of Hawthorne that we're in and all of the local cities, like they have Instagrams and they were active. So I was like, okay, like let me post the flyer on our Instagram and then let me tag like all of those different cities. And so then there's another Instagram that's really big in the community. And they had posted like one of my own personal things from my page. So I was like, okay, they're familiar with who I am. Like, I know they see like, you know, my stuff, or they reshare people. So I tagged them in it. And I think like that was huge because a lot of people, other community groups were following that page. So they reshared us. And then I also had posted in 2 mom groups on Facebook, and a lot of kids came from those groups as well. So just between those 2 things.
Yeah. I think that is an excellent idea. And I'm going to steal that idea and use it as a center. And I think that anybody that's interested in doing virtual learning in their programs, whether that be centers or home daycares, or like Shaniqua is a freelance provider, those kinds of services, it is always, we were just talking, myself and Shaniqua, about how we cannot do like, you know, the exchanging of business cards or flyers or anything like that. Yes, having a website is important. Yes, having Google presence is important, but also I do think that it is known that connecting with people through social media and share and the reshare of the services that you provide is a great strategy to use to gain a bigger following. Right. Before you made it free and before you opened it up and did all of this stuff to get these 90 new families, how many of your own families did you have that were actually paying and participating?
We had about like 6. before, and like half of which weren't even like our own families. They were people that were just kind of far out that maybe had seen our ads. I think at any given time, the most that we had was like 8, which I'm like, I mean, it's not bad considering it's something new, but I felt like in order for it to work, we needed volume.
Right.
And so I was just like, well, how can I get the volume if we're not getting it from these ads and these other things? So I was like, well, let me just make it free, see what works, what doesn't work, and then maybe eventually do an add-on. So maybe we could say like, we have the free portion, but if you want to do like a smaller group, then it's just this small fee or it's that fee. But at least we have all those people that know about us, that like us, that are talking about us.
Yeah.
in
That's
front
awesome. I know that is going to give you such great leverage once everything does settle down. Having 90 new people on your contact list provides so much value. Even though you took away the pricing, I'm very impressed because that's a great idea. I wish my camera was working so you could see me. But even though you took away the fee and made it a free, program, just having that contact list of people that you can now market your services to, who clearly, obviously have young children in
Right.
their homes that might need daycare after this is over, or once they do feel comfortable. Like, I know you're going to get a whole bunch of new enrollments, and that you might need to think about acquiring another center.
Exactly. We've already got
space for them.
we've already gotten some parents kind of asking, like one person had put in the comments on our forum, like, oh, I really want to try this out because our school's closed and we're currently looking, or she said like we're on the wait list for a few schools to get in. And we're like, well, we have space open, if you're interested. And she's like, yeah, I'd love to check you guys out. And I'm like, even just that one parent is conversation enough.
Right, exactly. But we have to start thinking about the value of even just one child and how much we're willing to spend on an advertisement, or an event or procedure to even just get one new enrollment is thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars over the years that a child would be enrolled with you. So I love that idea, which is why I'm spending so much time talking about it.
Oh yeah, no worries.
So my last question about that, though, is that I'm sure people are wondering is, how are you structuring the virtual learning? Like, is it a weekly thing? Is it a daily thing? And how do you go about doing it?
Yeah, so we, like I said, initially we were doing it was like an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in the afternoon with a long break in the middle. So the teacher had to be there for like 6-7 hours. So we changed it now to just every day, Monday through Friday from 10 to 11. And
Okay.
so we give the parents, like we send out the lesson plans, what they need to follow along. And so like a lot of them ran out, got the stuff. So the kids like have all the materials and follow along.
Wow, that is awesome. That's similar to what is going on in my program. We did open it to the public. It is paid, and we didn't do much advertising about the virtual classroom, but it is every day for an hour a day. We do like a circle time and a quick activity. The difference is that we are going out, purchasing the supplies and delivering it to families. And it sounded like you were doing that in the beginning and you stopped.
Yeah.
Is that what you were saying? You had a box that you were delivering?
Yeah, so we were just shipping ours out because we didn't
Oh,
want
okay.
to do like the logistics or the delivery. And
Yeah.
it's got so complicated. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what if you're on week 1 or the first month, but then they sign up the 3rd week? Do you have to take some stuff out the box? And it was just so complex. I was just like, how can we just make this simple and then get all of the people and kind of just go from there?
Right. Even if I just so recommend, now that you said, the amount of attention that you got from offering it, even if it was just a simple circle time thing, that you implemented every day, or it was a few minutes a day. It doesn't even have to be an hour. If you can offer something for free that's of value to parents during this time, they'll sign up, especially if it's free.
Yeah, and we got so many comments. They're just like, I needed this so much. They're looking for something.
So is it a YouTube video? Is it Zoom?
No, so we do Zoom. We go live, and they just log into Zoom.
Okay, well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that idea, and I really hope that the attendees on this panel, on this webinar, take advantage of that idea. Put some things into place as we begin to roll into now. Like, what does the summer program look like? Is there summer virtual learning? Will virtual learning continue in the fall? So I'm glad that we expanded on this topic. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to open up the floor for Q&A, and I'm going to bring back Shaniqua and Dominique. So if you have any questions as attendees, please put your questions in the Q&A box. We have a couple in there already, so let's dive right in. And Felicia, thank you so much for sharing what's been going on in your program. I do want to acknowledge that we did have a question that I figured Felicia could answer, but I think it would be great for all of us to kind of give our input on. Ine, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, wants to know, is this a good time to open a center? We'll start with you, Felicia. What do you think?
I think it's a great time to open up a center. I mean, I think you definitely need to still make sure that like you've done all of your research and you have like your funds and your finances and all that stuff in order. But I feel like there's just so much opportunity. Like I look every day for spaces and I'm starting to see more become available. Landlords are starting to work with people because their tenants are just abandoning, moving out. So I feel like now's the time to where you could really get a good deal.
Right,
so
I agree. Dominique, do you have any input into opening new centers at this time?
I guess I'll say, it's really up to the individual, and what it is their budget can afford. I'm really, really big on budgeting and saving and, budget projections. And although we can't like foresee the future right now, at one point in time, I have 4 locations open and, it becomes very costly. And so I guess I just say that it's really considering on your budget and making sure that you have, I'm really big on umbrella, like an umbrella of funding, not just by your own funding, but, acquiring an additional funding, whether that's lines of credit, whether that's credit cards, just acquiring different streams of revenue to have that cushion. Because like I think it was Shaniqua or Felicia that mentioned, you just don't know what's going to happen come fall. And people may work with us now, but they definitely are still going to want, that funding moving forward. And it's really hard enough to just considering like the state and the city. Are they going to be coming out at their regular 30 to 45 day window, or is it going to be, pushed back because they're behind in paperwork? Are they going to be doing it virtual? So there's just a lot of things of uncertainty, that you really have to consider. And then I guess it just really goes back to the size. Like sometimes when people open up facilities, they jump out and get super large, centers, and sometimes people say small. So I guess my idea would be, I want to like know, what's for you is for you. That's going to happen. But if you can't, get that super large building that you want, but you still want to open up a childcare facility, maybe try to meet you, yourself, and your budget in the middle, so that you can still be progressing along, but not like over like doing it for yourself, so that if you look up a year from now and you're still not open, you can still function afloat.
Right. And for centers specifically, I'll just add my 2 cents that I think before this emergency began, we were getting ready to implement expansion plans and open another program. And it's honestly slowed down. We decided to like pause on that idea right before this whole thing started, and now that we're in this in these unprecedented times and we see that other centers are closing, I do think that, like Felicia mentioned, it does present an opportunity to possibly acquire other programs, or at least those buildings will become available. But I think that Dominique makes a good point as to like maybe slow down for a second. And I personally think it's necessary to get some official guidance and official, like, what are the new regulations going to be? Mm-hmm. What are the new requirements going to be? What if you buy, like Dominique said, a large center, and now all of a sudden class sizes are mandatory to be reduced to 10 or less, when you thought that your capacity was going to be one thing and now it's about half what you thought. Mm-hmm. So even if you are trying to get ready to acquire a new building or lease or sign a lease, maybe at least consult with your local licensing agency to see if they can give you at least some guidance as to what the future within licensing looks like. And that's going to be different, most likely, from state to state. Mm-hmm. Shaniqua, do you have any insight as to, is this a good time, do you think, for people to get into freelance childcare?
I think it could go two different ways, because you can get into childcare, but because of COVID and the uncertainties, working with more than one family may not be the best thing to do at this time because you are in their home. So like I mentioned, I'm only working with one family per week. So if you're just jumping out there as a freelance provider, and it may be a little shaky starting out, but I would say with all this quarantine going on and people actually staying home, it is a good time to get your things together so that if things kind of adjust and move toward, us being able to get out a little bit more, then you will be ready and prepared. Because a lot of people that follow me are nannies and, part-time providers, and a lot of them have been laid off. So because of that, coming out of the quarantine or coming out of COVID, it's good to really prepare for what is to come. So I would say you can, but it may be a little tricky. So having different sources of income, which is what I'm working on, having a lot of passive income, because if you like newborns, or if you're very experienced with newborns, then maybe a course or just connecting with people virtually would be great as well. That's my thoughts on that.
Right. We do have a question for you in the Q&A box, Shaniqua. Rainforest wants to know, what school would you recommend for becoming a newborn care specialist?
So Newborn Care Solutions is a really good course for that. They have a foundational and an advanced. I went through Newborn Care Training Academy, which was good as well. I think that's not, but which is good as well. But I would definitely lean more towards Newborn Care Solutions.
Okay. Thank you for that. Joy wants to know, have you added a HIPAA clause to your policy since you are taking temperatures and recording them? So I'm assuming that would be for us, Felicia and Dominique, within our centers, and what we plan to do as far as temperature taking. Dominique, do you want to start off with that?
Yeah, so, as I always say, everything's like always ongoing. And so we have just used simply the basic questions that our DHS, which I guess Octo, is considered to ask those specific questions upon arrival. So we have not directly put in an actual HIPAA law clause because the parent is kind of a working together, when they come in, but we have created a form that parents, are signing off on to let them know that this is a part of, the everyday process, and the confidentiality clause is at the bottom of that, just like all the other forms that we have that the parent has to, fill out in that acknowledgement form.
Okay, and how about you, Felicia?
Yeah, so I would say ours is kind of similar to Dominique, to where we do state like that it's confidential, and we have forms that we send over electronically for them to sign, just to say like these are all the procedures that we're doing, but we don't specifically have a HIPAA clause, which I put that in my notes to definitely like look into that.
Absolutely.
That as well.
I think that was a great question, Joy, that sometimes we get asked questions. Well, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I get asked questions that I'm like, maybe this is something that I need to look into.
Absolutely.
But I will say that temperature readings have always been something that, at least in New York, was mandatory for us to acknowledge. We've never been allowed as a licensed program to care for children that have over a certain temperature. I don't know if you, and maybe let me look back at that question. Oh yeah, because she said since we're recording them. We are not required to record, in New York, we're not required to record the temperatures that we do take. As a best practice method in my center, we just started doing that, where we will document the temperature readings for every child every day, just in case something comes up where a family, where someone needs to know, did we do our part? So we are doing that, but it isn't something that I thought about needing to add into, as a clause into, a HIPAA clause into our policy. And my little piece of advice would be to have a attorney on your team, even if it's not someone that you necessarily have on a retainer or like your own designated attorney. If there's someone that you can turn to with legal questions like that, make sure you have someone like that you can ask questions to for your business. That is important just in general. And the last question that we're going to go through is another one from Joy, who wants to know, have you adjusted your hours for childcare? How are you addressing lunch, restroom breaks for teachers, since the CDC wants children to stay with the same children for the day? So that's kind of two questions in one. And I know, Dominique, you already spoke on the fact that you are going to reduce your hours, right?
Yeah, so we are definitely reducing our hours because overall, during our particular programs, I guess in essence, we function. So our summer program, we already know is very, we intentionally keep it short because during our school year, as a partner with the pre-K program, it's full enrollment all year long. So we're really utilizing this time for the summer time that, yes, we are reopening, but we're really putting these practices into place for real trial and error so that we can know what it's really going to look like when we, run 60, 70 kids during that school year. So we are reducing our hours so that we can also have the sanitary practices, investing in the airless sprayer, and other additional ways for teachers to sanitize on an everyday base, prior to the end of the day. And then in regards to lunch breaks and things like that, we do already have a separate area for the teachers to take lunch breaks. So just really, we are going to, I guess, initially start out because we only go pre-K to 12. So it's a little bit easier to work with those ratios as far as same group families. So we will be able to bring in that, that same floater person to cover those separate times.
Right. Okay, thank you for sharing. Felicia, do you have anything on hours or breaks for teachers and lunch and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we did reduce our hours. We closed and opened like an hour open an hour late and then close an hour early just to have extra time for cleaning, sanitizing, prepping. And then as far as like keeping in the same group, so right now we just have like one main group of children that are all in the same class. So we're able to still maintain like the lower ratio for them. And then once our infant program opens back up on Monday, then we'll be able to do it for them. And then as far as the break, so like the virtual preschool teacher will give the preschool class a break, and then we have our director that can do the infant. So right now, like there's enough people to kind of move around, and we just have to kind of figure out once everybody comes back how that will work.
Right. I'm kind of in the same boat. We have an excess amount of staff, so much so that we're in my program, we're doing a week on and a week off, where half of our staff comes in as one group 1 week, and then the following week they have off work because the other half of the staff is coming in. Before we started doing that, we did have like an extra 6-7 teachers on site that were kind of breaking themselves during lunch. So we haven't had that issue to deal with just yet. And but I do think it's important to put those plans in place prior to reopening. I think that's something that kind of gets overlooked when we're scheduling, when we're making plans for schedules in the classrooms. Like, you might at the last minute think about lunch breaks and stuff like that, but during this time when you're not trying to mix age groups and mix classroom teachers going from one room to the other, it is important to think about. Well, thank you ladies so much for your input. This has been a great conversation, and I'm so grateful that you guys have agreed to join this webinar. Thank you for everything that you shared. And for everybody that is still watching, thank you for being here through the end. Please be sure to follow us all on our social media platforms that are listed here if you're not doing so already. And I'm sure that if you have any further questions, these lovely ladies would be able to help you directly if you message them. And like I said, I will be adding in the links to their websites and communications in the notes area when the replay becomes available, which will be tomorrow evening. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a great night.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, ladies. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to subscribe to childcaresites.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel as well. Most of my videos nowadays are childcare business tips for providers and people interested in the industry like yourself. So go to youtube.com/DaniChristine and subscribe. Don't forget to follow Childcare Sites on Instagram and turn your post notifications on to be notified every single time I upload videos on YouTube, as well as post more resources on Childcare Sites. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.